updates keyword, users is the name of the table, set is a keyword, and then this is column equals new value, and then a where clause. Again, this update, if we didn't have a where clause, would change every row in the table. And so where email equals csev@umich.edu. Oh, I got to change that because I already got the name to be Charles. So you see the name is already Charles. So I'll just execute here. Make this be Chuck so we see it. And then I run it. And then you take a look at the data and it's changed. That's it. That's an update statement. You're doing great. You're doing great. And so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how we retrieve data. Now this is the select statement, select, star. You have a list of columns, and star means all columns. From is a keyword, and then the name of a table. So this select star from users is the kind of thing you type all the time. As a matter of fact, it's what SQLite Browser is doing internally to cause this to happen, but we can do it by hand by saying select star from users and then run it. And so then we get a little record set that is those 4 records that are sitting there. We can also throw a where clause on the end of it. So we say select star from users where email equals csev@umich.edu, and that, again, the select star from users goes at the whole table, and the where clause goes at the whole table and then filters out all of the things except one record. So the where clause is send it to the table, but then filter based on whatever, and so it only shows us that. Okay, we're cruising right along here. You can also put an order by clause on there. So we can say select star from users, order by email, so that's a column. Select star from users, order by email. And so that orders by email. Or we can change it to name, and we can say descending. So that's the name in descending order. Sorting and selecting are good things that databases are really good at. So this is the summary of what I've told you. I said the databases do create, read, update, and delete, CRUD. And we've done all those things, except we did create, delete, update, read. That's what we did. And that's the summary of SQL. And so you might be saying, why did I take so long to learn such a simple and elegant and beautiful language? Because it's not really exciting. It's a extremely simple language that's very predictable. And you're like, well, that's pretty easy. And it turns out that some of you may have been using SQL in situations, maybe with Microsoft Access or something, where you're actually typing this stuff and you just kind of typed it and you never realized that you were learning a programming language. That's why I like SQL, and that's a very declarative language and it's very straightforward. It's much harder to learn. It's much easier to learn SQL than it is to learn Python, because in Python you have to figure out how loops work and how iteration variables work, and you'll notice there's none of that. And so but the key is we've only started to understand the power. That's the simple ability to move around and update data and read data randomly using these simple sets of commands. But up next, we're going to look at how you do this with data models and relationships and really multiple tables. Hello and welcome to a code walkthrough. In this bit of code we're talking about the emaildb.py. This is a beautiful little example in that it sort of reduces talking to the database to kind of its pure essence. And so we'll start out this code and we import the SQLite 3 just to get the library there. We make a connection, and in databases we sort of end up with an open that's 2 steps. There's the connection to the database, which checks access to the file, and the cursor is kind of like our handle. It's not as simple as you just open it and read it, but you open it and then you send SQL commands through the cursor, and then you get your responses through that same cursor. So CUR here is the variable that we're interested in. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to we've got this file. It will either create this file, and right now this file doesn't exist. It's going to be in the same directory. Oops, email. Yeah, there's no email DB. So this is actually going to create the file when it runs. And then the first thing we're going to do is drop the table if it exists. Drop table is a bit of SQL. The if exists just keeps this from blowing up if we start with a fresh database. And in this case, there is no file there, so we are starting with a fresh database. So this will accomplish absolutely nothing, which is just fine. Now we're using triple quotes here. I'm just kind of using that to make this a little bit easier to read. I probably could pull those lines up a bit. This one's actually small enough that I could, maybe I'll just do that. Let's do that. Let's bring that baby right up and turn this into a single quote. That's short enough, right? But triple quote is just, this one here is a little longer, so I use triple quote. So we're going to drop table. That's going to do nothing first time through. Then we're going to do a create table. Now sometimes your application will have like a README or something. It says go run these commands to set the database up, but we're able to just set this database up in this particular application. We'll see later ones where we're going to leave the database and not start it fresh. And in this one, we can do the same. And so, but this one, in this one, we could, but we're just going to start fresh by dropping the table. So we'll create it. We're going to have a email and an account. We're going to, basically what we're doing here is we're really going to pretend that this is a dictionary. If you recall, when I said dictionary, dictionary is like an in-memory database. Well, now we're using a database to do a database, but the first thing we're going to do here is pretend it's a dictionary. So that's a little crazy. So these next lines of code hopefully are pretty familiar to you, right? Get a file name, loop through it, check to see if it's grab inbox short by default, so we can press the enter key and then loop through it, right? And so this little part right here, this is our basic loop that we're doing, and so that is pretty normal. And if we look at this line right here, that line right there is the line that is that line right there makes sure that we can only get the from lines. We've done that a bunch of times, and we're going to split it. We're not going to strip the right because the split's going to take care of that. And then we're going to grab the email address, which of course in the from line is the second part, and then we will have that. So now we're going to do some database. So the first thing we're going to do, this bit right here is kind of like the dictionary part. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to select count from our database, that is an integer, where email equals. And this part right here bears some explaining. This is going to be c7@umich.edu or whatever. Now, it is dangerous to put those strings, especially from user-entered data, into your SQL. You technically could. I could make this be a email equals single quote c7@umich.edu. I'd have to escape the quotes and stuff. But this question mark is a placeholder. And this is a way to basically make sure that we don't allow SQL injection. Go Google SQL injection to get a sense of what that is. It's more of an issue in online applications, but in this application we're just being good. And so the way this works is this is a placeholder in this SQL that will ultimately be replaced by this. Now you could have several question marks. We only have one in here. And so you give a tuple. And if we just put email, it won't turn into a tuple. This is a one tuple basically. This little weird parenthesis email, comma, parenthesis, that is a tuple with only one thing in it, and that's just the weird Python syntax. It's rare that I apologize for Python syntax, but that's a little bit less than pretty, but it's okay, it's a tuple. And normally, if there were like two of these, then there would be email, name, da 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 da. Okay? So this cur.execute is actually not really retrieving the data. In a way, it's looking at the SQL and making sure that maybe it might verify that the table name is right, or if there's any syntax errors, etc., etc. So this actually is not really reading the data. So, but we have prepared this cursor. This is kind of like the opening of a file, but what we're opening is a record set. We're opening a set of records that are going to, be this wherever it's true. So it's like we're going to read this like a file. Now later things will loop through this, but we're only going to say, hey, grab that first one, right? We could have even put maybe a limit clause on there or something. Grab the first one and give it back in row. And so row is going to be the information that we get from the database. And so that is, if there are no records that meet this, then row is going to be none. So here's kind of, again, like the get. Here's like the get, where if the row wasn't there,